Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome back, dear students. We have finished and accomplished our unit, which is Unit 6. So just to remind you, the basic idea or the topic that we discussed in Unit 6 was about the gender divide. Now, the gender divide that we have here in the unit, of course, it is about genders, but specifically we discussed actually the different behavior that we have here between the two genders. There were lots of interesting facts and information that we talked and read about throughout the unit. Now we are going to go to a slight difference here. Now, instead of talking about different behaviors or reactions, as we said in Unit 6, we have something else. Now, you can guess the topic that we have here from this word here. So here we are going to deal with mistakes. We are going to start our unit. We have done or accomplished Unit 6 and moving on to Unit 7, which is about everyone makes mistakes. This is the title of our unit. Now, we are going to start with the first lesson. We have here the first one is, of course, our listen and discuss lesson. Now, here in this unit, we have many questions. We are going to just discuss what we have here on page number 96. Now, on page number 96, we have some interesting questions. The first one, just think about it. We have here the question, how would you define the word mistake? Now, I'm going to give you just a second to think about the word mistake. What does mistake mean? Now, we can say a lot of this word. We can say that everyone, of course, makes mistakes. Now, we do have some small mistakes, like when you have a mistake in an exam, for example. And of course, there are big mistakes that may affect your life or life decisions in general. So we have to be very careful to not make these kinds of mistakes. But of course, it is normal that everyone makes mistakes. Now we have here also in the book, the second question. Now let's read it together. We have here, what do you think the following quote means? Now let's read the quote. Don't fear failure so much that you refuse to try new things. The saddest summary of life contains 3 descriptions. Could have, might have, and should have. Now, this is a famous quotation here. Now, a lot of people, when they make mistakes, these 3 descriptions, they come in mind. I could have done this, or if I have done that. So, what do you think about this quotation? Now, you can just take your time to think about it, and also you can discuss with a classmate and just discuss together what is the meaning of the quotation here, and just think about it a little bit more. Now we have also the third question in the book. What is the third question? Accepting failure and hardship is often difficult. How do we endure such bad situations? Now, when you are in a bad situation, how do you deal with these situations? What do you do about them? Now, also accepting or refusing a situation is something hard sometimes we face. So how do you endure them? As we said, we are going to talk about mistakes in general. We do have our objectives here, so let's start with them. We have number 1, to recall different types of mistakes. Give personal thoughts about the effects of mistakes. Number 3, to examine historical mistakes. Now, this is interesting. We are going to study about mistakes, but these are very famous or historical mistakes done. We have number 4, to analyze situations. Number 5, to discuss different consequences. Number 6, to give the meaning of new vocabulary. And we have number 7, recall personal experiences related to mistakes. Now you can see that it is an interesting lesson that we are going to enjoy together, inshallah. Now let's start here. We're going to start with a hadith from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. عن أنس رضي الله عنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم كل بني آدم خطاء وخير الخطائين التوابون. Now, as we said, that it is something normal that we do make mistakes, but the most important think is how to fix our mistakes and think about our future. Now, in the book, we have on the pages 96 and 97 to read about historical mistakes. So let's start. Now we're going to read the titles to know what they are about. I'm going to give you a chance here just to discover the titles. You are going to open your books on these pages. Just look at the 4 parts that you have here, and you can see that there are titles for each part. Now, just read and let's just discover together what are the mistakes about. We have the first one. Now, from these pictures here, the different parts, you can see that we have something old or classic. So, mistake. A company rejected the patent for the telephone. Now, this is number 1. Number 2. Now, here you can see a ship. Of course, we can see that it has sunk. So here, this ship, it is a famous ship. What is the name of it? You can see it in the title. So together, we have your mistake. The Titanic ignored warnings about icebergs. We have number 3. Now from this picture here, what can you discover? What is the title about? We have the third mistake. Russia sold Alaskan gold to the US. So Alaska is a part of the US. We have here, it is known for it to be an icy or a very cold area. So we can see that there is something about gold. And we have the last part from the picture. Yes, okay, so it is very clear that the title here, mistake, Coca-Cola tampered with their successful formula. Now, formula is one of the words that we are going to learn, inshallah, or we have actually learned it, if you can remember, in the previous units. Now, when we talked about in unit 4 and unit 5, we had the word formula. Now, we said that there are different types of movie formulas or chemical formulas. There are baby formulas. Also here, just to recall, when we studied in unit 5, that we have the word formula is a kind of combination. So here we go back to the word. You can see that we have here Coca-Cola has a special formula, and there was something done which was a mistake. Okay, so our lesson, historical mistakes, we are going to start with it here. We are going to listen carefully to the texts, and you are going to also look for answers for questions I have prepared for you. Now, the 2 questions that we are going to ask, the first one, what is the mistake in each part? And the second question is going to be, why is this a mistake? So, before we start, we're going to just take a look, and we are going to discuss the new vocabulary that we have throughout the reading parts. And at the very end, we are going to go back to the exercise and answer. So we have the words. Number 1, a very simple word, boost. We have number 2, endure. We have number 3, a very simple word. You can read it with me. We have here the word flop. And from the pronunciation, flop, you feel that it is something that just goes down. We have here number 4, novelty. We have number 5, outraged. We have number 6, tampered. Now, we are not going to do the exercise. Just put in mind that we have here these 6 words to underline and discuss throughout the lesson. Now we're going to start here. So we have the first part, mistake number 1. Be prepared. Now the first questions that we have, number 1, what was the president of the company offered? There is a company, and we have here some kind of offer. Just look for the answer. And the second question, to scan for names. So you're going to listen and also try to find the answers for me. Now, before we start, let's just go back to the title here. A company rejected the patent for the telephone. Now, what is the meaning of patent? This is an interesting word here. Now, when you do something for the first time, nobody has done it before, and it is something that is like an invention that you want to prove that you have done it by yourself or that you own it, there has to be a patent for it. Let's start.
Mistake. A company rejected the patent for the telephone. In 1876, the most important communications technology was the telegraph. A wealthy company called Western Union was in control of this technology. The president of the company, William Orton, was offered the patent for an invention called the telephone for $100,000. Orton sent a response to the 29-year-old inventor of the telephone, Alexander Graham Bell.
Okay, so let's start our answers. We have the first question. What does the president of the company offered? Yes, you can see the answer here. We have the president of the company, William Morton, was offered the patent for an invention called the telephone. So here we understand that the telephone was not known those days, and we have here it was presented to the president of the company. Moving on, we have the second one, which is to scan for names. Now, actually, I have mentioned the first name here, which is we have William Morton. Now, where is the second name? Have you found it yet? We have here the second name. A very short paragraph. Yes, it is at the very end. And actually, it is a famous name here. We have here Alexander Graham Bell. Now, we're going to move on to the second part. Now, we are still in the first mistake. We have just one question. What happened to Bell's patent? Now, when he was presented or he was offered the patent, what happened to it? You're going to listen also and also look for the answer.
It said, after careful consideration of your invention, while it is a very interesting novelty, we have come to the conclusion that it has no commercial possibilities. What use could this company make of an electrical toy? Bell kept the patent and created his own telephone company, which became the largest in the US. The patent Bell had offered Western Union eventually became the most valuable patent in history. Orton could have made one of the best deals in business history. Instead, he may have made the worst business mistake in history.
Now, actually, you can see that this is a very big mistake that was mentioned here, or the president had made. Now, did you find, we have here a longer paragraph. Where is the answer? What happened to Bell's patent? We can see that it is here. Yes, okay, we have here the word novelty. Let's just go back here. Now, novelty here, from the sentence, after careful consideration, the president said that it was an interesting novelty. Now here, a novelty, as we mentioned, is something that is new, it is not known before, and because you have this novelty, you may get a patent or you can present a patent for it. So here, something that is new, we can say a new idea that you are going to present. Okay, now going back to our question here, or let's just, yes. You can see in the very middle, let's just read it together. We have here, Bell kept the patent and created his own telephone company, which became the largest in the US. The patent Bell had offered Western Union eventually became the most valuable patent in history. So he was refused, he was rejected, and after that he kept his own patent, which became the most valuable in history. And of course, we all know this invention, which is the telephone, that is a very old invention and is still used to our present days. Now we have our two questions. What is the mistake? Now, what did we understand from the first part here? We can say that the answer, yes, Western Union rejected the patent. So this was actually the president's mistake. Now he rejected the patent for the telephone. And why? Why is this a mistake? Now, if you think about it, when I said that Bell's patent became the most valuable in history, this means that we have here the reason the company would have made a lot of money if they had accepted the patent. Okay, so this is the first mistake. Let's start with mistake number 2. Now we are going to do the same as we did before. So we have here the second mistake. We have the second paragraph, which is about the Titanic ignoring warnings about icebergs. Now we know that the Titanic is a famous story. If you do not know much about it, it is a historical ship that had sunk. You can read about it and learn more, and actually it is a real story that you can find very interesting. Now let's see the questions. We have the first one. What did the captain of the Titanic do when he received the warnings? And we have the second question. What happened to the Titanic? Now there had something or an event or a tragedy actually happened. So we're going to just read about it. You are going to listen and search for the answers at the same time. Let's start. Now we have here the word ignoring. What is the meaning of ignoring? Just think about it. When we say that you ignore something, you acknowledge it, someone tells you about it, but you choose to ignore or not pay attention. We have also the word icebergs. So just to get familiar with the topic here, do you know what an iceberg is? Now, from the word ice, we know that it is something very cold. From the word berg, we know that it is something like this. Now, this is an iceberg. Now, usually they are in the South or the North Pole. And let's listen.
Mistake. The Titanic ignored warnings about icebergs. On April 14, 1912, the RMS Titanic, the largest and most modern passenger ship of its time, hit an iceberg and sank. This resulted in the deaths of 1,517 people. Yet incredibly, this tragedy could have easily been avoided. On the day the Titanic sank, it had received 5 warnings from other ships about heavy ice in the area. However, the captain was not worried. In fact, he even increased the speed of the ship so that it could arrive in New York a day earlier than expected.
Okay, now we have here, this is the first part. Did you find the answers? We have the first one. Yes, now the first question, what did the captain of the Titanic do when he received the messages? We know on the day the Titanic sank, it had received 5 warnings from other ships about heavy ice in the area. However, the captain was not worried. In fact, he even increased the speed so that it could arrive to New York a day earlier. We have the second question, what happened to the Titanic? Now, from the very beginning of our underlined answer here, we know that the Titanic had sunk. So we have here, yes, the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. Moving on to the second part, we have the word tragedy, as I mentioned. Yes, okay, so we have the 2 questions. Did the Titanic receive more warnings? We have here yes, no question. And the second one, what did the operator do?
That evening, while the Titanic's radio operator was sending out personal messages from the passengers, he received a 6th ice warning. This one warned of an iceberg directly in the path of the Titanic. The operator was supposed to give the message to the captain. But busy with his task, he put the message aside. It never reached the captain. If it had, the Titanic tragedy might never have happened.
So, going back to our yes-no question here, did the Titanic receive more warnings? You can see from the answer that we have here, he received a 6th ice warning. So we have our answer is yes, it did. And the second question, what did the operator do? Actually, you can see that there are 2 answers in different places. Now we have here, first of all, the Titanic's radio operator was sending out personal messages, and that's why he was busy. When he got the 6th warning, he ignored it because he was busy sending out the personal messages, and the message never reached the captain. So when we come to our questions here, we have here, what is the mistake? Now, clearly, the mistake, the captain ignored 5 warnings about icebergs, and the radio operator didn't give the captain another warning. What was the result of the message, the mistake? We have here, why is this a mistake? Of course, it resulted in the deaths of 1,517 people. Coming to our third mistake here, mistake number 3. Now we have here the title, Russia sold Alaskan gold to the U.S. Now, as I mentioned before, that we have here something interesting about gold here, and we have the two countries, Russia and the US mentioned here. So we are going to see what is the problem between them and what is the idea of gold here. So we have a country, we have actually two countries, and we have here a state or a part of one of these two countries. Now we have three questions. First of all, scan for a place. Number two, what was this place considered to be? We have here number three, what happened to it? Now, before we start, we have the word burden. Now, something is considered a burden. Now, when you see something as a burden, this means that it is something that is heavy. Now, it can be meant materialistic or even by meaning here when we say that something is a burden, which is a kind of figure of speech as well. Now, this is something that is not wanted and actually considered very heavy.
Mistake. Russia sold Alaskan gold to the US. Alaska had been considered a burden, rather than an asset, by Russia for a long time. It was remote, indefensible, and of little benefit. So, when William Seward, U.S. Secretary of State, began negotiations on his own initiative, he expected to encounter some opposition. However, the outline of the deal was accepted by the cabinet and the agreement was signed in March 1867, transferring Alaska to the United States for a payment of $7.2 million.
Okay, very clearly here we have the two countries as we mentioned. Now scan for a place. The place is of course Alaska. Number two, what was this place considered to be? We can see that it is a burden rather than an asset. By Russia for a long time, it was remote, indefensible, and of little benefit. So they saw this part of land is useless and they just wanted to get rid of it. So what happened to it? We have here the third answer, transferring Alaska to the United States for a payment of $7.2 million. So you can see that this part of land was sold from the Russians to the US. So until now, we do not know what is the mistake here. So we're going to also listen to the second part that we have. Okay, so we have here, now from the questions, you can see that we have here two parts here. Now, first of all, it was greeted with criticism from the press and the people as well. Now here, because the land appeared to be useless, but attitudes that must have changed drastically after the discovery of gold. So they discovered gold in the area, which means that it became a very valuable part. So we have here, what is the mistake? We have here, Russia sold Alaska to the United States for 1.7 cents per acre. And the second part here, or the second question, why is this a mistake? There was gold in Alaska. Moving on, we have our last mistake, mistake number 4. We have the title, Coca-Cola tampered with their successful formula. We do have two questions. How did Coca-Cola tamper with their formula? And we have here, what was the response? So we have here the word tampered. Now tampered here, what it means here is when you have something and you just do something to it, you may ruin it, so it's not something done to it correctly or dealt with correctly. Okay, so let's listen.
Mistake. Coca-Cola tampered with their successful formula. Coca-Cola was launched in the 1880s. By 1980, it had been the most popular soft drink in the world for nearly 100 years. However, by that time Coke had more competition, and its sales figures started slipping. In an effort to boost sales, Coca-Cola created a new, improved formula. This new formula was tested in 200,000 taste tests, and the results were clear. Most people much preferred the flavor to the original Coke.
Okay, so let's answer our question. How did Coca-Cola tamper with their formula? Now we have here, they created a new, improved formula. But we have the second question. What was the response? Did people like the new, improved taste or formula? So we have the answer is, of course, here. Let's just see. Before, okay, so let's see just this word. We have here the word boost. Now boost here, why? Why did they change the formula here? Because they tried to boost their rates here, or we can say that they tried to boost sales in general. Going back to our question, we can see that most people much preferred the flavor to the original Coke. Moving on to our third, or the last part here, actually, we have the same thing, the same question. What was the response? So we're going to complete and look for more answers. We have the second question, was the idea successful?
The Coca-Cola Company decided to stop producing the formula they had been using for 100 years and to replace it with new Coke. This was an enormous marketing mistake. People were outraged that the original Coke was no longer available, and new Coke was a flop. Coca-Cola executives must have been surprised. They had to get rid of new Coke quickly and bring back the original formula.
We have here people were outraged with the original Coke was no longer available. Now we have here the word outraged. Now the word outraged here, we can connect it to the meaning of angry, but stronger here we can say that someone is outraged. Moving on. We have the second question, was the idea successful? Now we can see that it was an enormous marketing mistake and the new Coke was a flop. Now, if you recall the word flop that I mentioned before, we have here the word flop here means something that just goes down. It was not a success. So we have here our two questions. What is the mistake? Coca-Cola changed their formula and taste. And why is this a mistake? We have here people were outraged that the original Coke was not available. So you can see that we have mentioned the four mistakes here. Now just to go back to the words that we explained throughout the lesson, we have the first one, boost. Now what did you understand? What is the meaning of boost? We have here boost means, yes, F, now to raise something. To endure. Now endure here, we have here the meaning is going to be to put up with. Now something that you are not happy about it, but you have to endure it, means that you are putting up, like when Russia, they didn't want to endure with Alaska. We have here to flop, we just mentioned that flop here means something that was a failure. Novelty, number 4, means that something is a new thing, as we mentioned about the telephone. Now people were outraged, which means very angry. And we have here 6, tampered. Now tampered here means interfered with. Now when they changed the formula of Coca-Cola, they interfered with it. We have our comprehension questions on page number 97. Now what are the comprehension questions? As mentioned, we have here the first one. What was William Orton's mistake? Now actually we did answer them. We have here William Orton did not realize that the telephone would become the most valuable patent in history. How could the sinking of the Titanic have become avoided? Now when we mentioned something about warnings, so this means that we have here, if the radio operator had given the warning to the captain about the iceberg that was directly in the ship's path, the Titanic might not have sunk. Also, we have here the third question. What do the Russians probably regret and why? Now we mentioned something about gold here. Russia probably regretted selling Alaska to the United States since the Americans discovered gold. Leading us to our fourth question, how did Coca-Cola mess with success? As we mentioned, they tried to change the formula of the soft drink that had been the most popular in the world for over 100 years. Now by that we have reached to the last part, which is pair work. Now you are asked in the book, page number 97, interview your partner to find out about a mistake they or someone they know once made. Ask questions as, what was the mistake? Who made the mistake? Why was the mistake made? And what happened as a result of the mistake? How could it have been avoided? We have reached the very end. We have the first part, we discussed different mistakes. We understood context through words and defined vocabulary. And we have the last part. What did we do? We analyzed different mistakes and recall personal experience, which is actually your task to do. So be prepared, discuss, and we're going to see you in the next lesson, inshallah.